So it's time to tap into your internal power and pull up a cup with us at the InPower Coffee Break. I'm Dana Theus with InPower Coaching, and I have Mary Brody here with us, also of InPower Coaching. And today's topic is a lot of things around being laid off, being in an organization that is doing layoffs, and how to think about that in the context of both your workplace and the reality that is changing very rapidly around you, as well as your career. And what does this mean for you if you either might get caught up in the layoffs or are definitely getting caught up in the layoffs? And we're going to talk about that from multiple angles here and give you some advice on how to think about your career development and managing yourself and your team through this process successfully, so that you come out, for the better, no matter what happens and no matter what the organization does. We hold these coffee breaks live every Tuesday from 1 to 1:30 Eastern, and we have them recorded on YouTube and on Apple iTunes podcasts. We encourage you to watch them there and leave reviews and sign up for reminders about topics coming up at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com. You can also join us live any week that you'd like to, and when you sign up for reminders, you'll get login information if you'd like to join us live. And on these conversations, we really cover a broad range of topics about how to achieve work-life satisfaction overall, but how to manage your career and develop your career in that context. And we look at InPower strategies that you control, regardless of what other people around you are doing. And it's all designed to help you be in and lead a pro-human and pro-employee workplace. So we encourage you to join us live and comment also after the fact in comments on the website at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com. So now let's get into this topic of layoffs. And I'm going to hand it over to Mary to sort of introduce the topic because she's been very close to it lately. And then we're going to talk about some coaching strategies to manage this situation if you get caught up in it. So Mary, why don't you introduce the topic and why you thought this was timely right now?
Yeah, I've been hearing through friends and colleagues about a number of different layoffs and reorgs happening. I think when I get my nails done, I hear about different companies going through getting reorgs and layoffs. Different friends and colleagues will tell me what's going on with that. I've heard about two very different responses to a layoff. Like one is panic, right? That's the one we all kind of think of first, that, oh my God, I have to get a job. I need money. What am I going to do? The other one is, and I hear this from some more senior people who sometimes volunteer for a layoff. Oh, good, I can redefine my life. And they're like, thank God, I didn't like my executive job anyway. It didn't take me where I wanted to go. Maybe this is a good time for a change. I don't know what I want to do. So it has two very different types of approaches. I think one thing too is I'm noticing that the challenges with the reorg and the layoff, they're kind of related. This is where I kind of see, because you hear one, you're going to hear about the other, right? Sometimes you hear just about the layoffs, but usually there's a tie somewhere. So in some of the questions, it might be bound between two, because I couldn't find a way to separate them cleanly, because there is a bit of a bond. So maybe we'll just start with the first one. So I think sometimes how most people hear about these things is through the grapevine, and they hear a rumor. And usually they travel like wildfire. So what should someone do when they hear such rumor? Should they panic? Should they, go talk to their boss? Should they just play it cool? Because this is usually how they first hear that something's coming down the pike. Although the execs don't like to admit that, right? This is usually how they hear about something's coming down the pike.
First of all, let's go back to the grapevine for a minute and think about what you're really hearing. Because first of all, so there are other instances that layoffs commonly accompany. So we're recording this towards the end of the year. Towards the end of the year, you're setting up budgets for next year. As a company, if you did or didn't hit revenue goals, and if you didn't, or if you didn't hit other financial goals that are going to require you to make some cutting, then it's very common that at the end of the year, as you're setting up next year's budgets, if there's going to be a layoff, it tends to happen at the end of the year, which of course is terrible for the individuals who get caught up in it because it's Christmas time, expenses. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas, it's a joyous time of year, and there's a lot of things to spend money on. So there's the year end. There's also mergers and acquisitions, which can happen at any time. And if you read in the paper, oh, we're going to be merging, we just made an acquisition that is in an area similar to mine. Those are all things that get the grapevine going. So the grapevine can start without any actual knowledge, simply because it's coming up on year end and you didn't make the numbers. So you can accidentally start a rumor just by pointing that out to somebody you're sitting next to. You can be contemplating a merger or acquisition, or you can read about a potential one in the newspaper, and that starts the grapevine going. So there's a lot of ways for the grapevine to get going without any information actually involved. So that's the first thing to consider when you hear a rumor, right? Is that it is a rumor. And what I advise people to do? The first thing I tell people to do is just use it as a wake-up call to do an assessment on where you are in your career and whether you'd want to be in a layoff. A lot of times in a layoff, you get a severance package, and that's not just for executives, that's for almost everybody. You get some benefits a lot of the time, not all of the time. But in larger organizations, it's more standard. And even in small organizations that care about their people, they try to give them some financial running room. They try to give them some outplacement coaching, career coaching. So, there are benefits that come along with that. And if you're truly unhappy with your job, maybe this is an opportunity, like you said, to volunteer for a layoff. And when you go into it intentionally, it's a completely different experience than just being in fear and then maybe getting that notification. So whether, before you even talk to your boss, before you even try to validate it, just say, hey, okay, wow, this could be big, so let me stop and think. Depending on where you come out of that, whether you're kind of like, yeah, that would be cool if I had an opportunity to get a big check and some running room to make a change, or, oh no, I love what I'm doing and I really need this job and I really want it. Depending, when you kind of know what you want out of a situation, it's not a bad idea to talk to your boss. And think of it in the context of A, information gathering, and B, checking in, how am I doing? If whether or not I got caught up in this layoff, would I be a candidate? What more can I be doing? As an opportunity to ask for feedback, particularly if you want to keep your job, or if you want this person as a reference, this is a great opportunity to get their take on how you're viewed by them and by others in the organization. If you end up not getting laid off, that's valuable information for to manage your personal brand. If it makes you more likely to get laid off, you want to know that too. So those are my two things, but first, before you go to validate it with other people, check in with yourself and ask yourself, would this be something that, might be hard, but might be welcome for me at this point in my life? Because you'll manage yourself differently, depending on, those two reactions. Does that make sense? Does that comport with your experience, Mary?
Yeah. No, I think that's true. Because I know I've been in situations where I did see a layoff as not a bad thing, because I did not fully like my job. So I like the expense account. I didn't like the job. So, it was actually a welcome switch. Everybody else was crying. I was like, thank God.
And actually, that happened to me too, but it was a little of both. In other words, my first reaction was, what? Oh no, I don't have a job. But then they gave us 6 months notice. So I actually used it as an opportunity to get an entrepreneurial contract to see if I wanted to be out on my own. And it didn't go well. And I said, nope, I want another job. And I got a job, and, I had time to get the job. So you got to act. I think that's the outcome here, is if you believe it's possible, or it's possible, and you might get anywhere near it, you've got to act. You can't be passive.
Yeah. No, and you have to do what you can do to either keep the work or not, like you said. But it's also determining what I think you made a good point. It's up to what you want out of this, not necessarily what the company wants, like kind of the whole, take your power back. It's not all up to them.
Yeah. And actually, that is the key, what you just said, which is that when you are passive and you feel like the victim, you act like a victim. And when you act like a victim, nobody else wants to hire you, either internally if you're going to look for another job, within the company or in the family of companies, or you're going to go out. You cannot take a victim mentality out with you into your next step in their career. And so you have to get a hold of it. You have to just say, okay, I'm going to decide what I want, and then use whatever happens as my opportunity to get there. And that's why when I do this with individuals, and we have it on the site now, we have tools to help you sit down and say, okay, first of all, how do I manage the stress of this? And second of all, what do I want? Not just in the context of your career, but your life. What's going on in your life, and what kind of job is going to support your life. Because a lot of people, the reason they say, oh, yay, let me take the layoff, is their job in their life have gotten out of whack, and they need to rebalance it. They want to go into a new work situation where they can set new boundaries, because maybe now they have kids and they didn't before, or now they don't have kids and they did before, or they never had kids, but now the family moved in, or, whatever it is. So, or they want to go back to school. So all those things, as we change, we need to rebalance our life and our work and how they relate. I know you can relate to that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So what are some hints that you should be prepared to hear that you're on the list? Or can you ever be prepared to be laid off?
Hints. That's sort of, when you see it, you'll know it. But anything that you detect as a major change towards you personally or a group of people, like, 1 week your boss is inviting you in for casual chats about next year's planning, and then that all stops. It just stops, and he's inviting, or she's inviting other people in, or that conversation stops completely. It can be little things like that. It can be big things like, all of a sudden they say, we don't need your budget proposal. That happened to me once.
Right.
And, the thing is if you have any reason to believe that there might be restructuring, reorganization, downsizing, layoffs, put your antenna up and start looking for changes in behavior by the company, or by, your boss and the people that are senior to you. And then like I said, you can always go ask them what's going on, but do that check-in first, so you know how you want to receive the information.
So do you find, because I've seen different approaches at different companies, how they handle layoffs? How have you seen most companies? Do some of them just I know some keep it as the big surprise and the big unveil, right? And then some will give employees a little bit of warning. I know the one I was in, we were told we didn't make our numbers and they need to make some cuts. And these are the teams, if we're going to cut, these are the ones we're probably going to cut. So if you're in that team, you might want to try to get on another team.
Well, that was nice of them, right?
That's what we were told. So, right. But I know not all companies. I've witnessed they don't say anything. I've also witnessed that there's the hints dropped, and sometimes very strong hints dropped, that you're on a list. What have you seen as the norm, so to speak?
I don't think there is a norm. I mean, I personally have been part of 2 major ones. One was a small company, total surprise. We did the numbers 1 week. We realized that we couldn't support, and I was on the executive team there, so I actually was part of that process. And, not to defend poor handling of this, but it's really hard, because the executive team is trying to figure out how to make all the things balance. And at some point they say, oh, we cannot afford all our expenses, and our people are always the biggest expense. So we know there's going to have to be a change. From the moment they make that determination to the moment they execute, there's a lot of planning that goes into trying to figure out, how small can we make the layoff, or how can we make this good for people? So that period where they're trying to figure it out, regardless of how well they do or don't handle it, that's where the rumors start. And even though you may be on the victim side, try to have empathy for the fact that it's a very difficult decision and it's hard to plan. Because if you go in bitter you don't get as much help from those very same people who perceive themselves as trying to help either save your job or make your transition smooth. So, but in the small company, it was literally a 2-week process. And then we just had a big meeting. We told everybody, we posted a list, and we said, this is what we can do for you. And we expected no work to get done for 3 days, and it didn't. And we just spent time one-on-one with people, helping them process and think through what was next. And, it was really, really hard. And I didn't like it. On the other hand, we were too small to have a lot of, severance. And we decided, well, we'd rather give them 2 weeks, or actually I think it was 3 weeks severance, instead of wait until the last minute and just say, sorry, don't come in tomorrow, right? We decided to do it, the hard part, early, so we could give them more financial running room. And that was the best decision we could make about what we thought would be best for them. It was very hard and very uncomfortable. And it was a total surprise to them. In the other situation I was involved in, we had this 6 months time frame. I mean, there'd been a huge merger, not very many layoffs at first, but then 2 years later, after they'd started to see where the overlaps were, they started to change their own business model. Whole areas were getting cut, and everybody knew it. And then they announced it, and we had 6 months, and we got a severance. And so there was a lot of time to plan. And I think everything in between is standard. And actually, this goes back to, you really could be in a situation where you need to think about another job at any moment, either because someone walks in and says you can't come in tomorrow, or because you're going to get an opportunity to get a new job in 6 months, or something else. Something happens in your life. Something happens to the company. There's a natural disaster that was the other thing. The thing that precipitated the small company layoffs in my case was 9/11. Our whole market, our whole business just dried up over a 3-week period. And, literally the income we had stopped. We had no reserves. So, that stuff happens. So really, you should always know what your next step in your career needs to be and be working towards that. So if something like this happens, you can begin to accelerate that plan. I personally ended up leaving that company shortly thereafter, and I didn't have a very good plan. And I learned, you need to have a plan.
So this gets to the next question. It's kind of a good lead in, I think, of like, what if you're uncertain? What should you do? So if you're like you think you may, you think you don't know, what should you do?
You mean you don't know if you're on the list?
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to what we said before. The first thing you should be doing is checking in. Do I want to leave? Do I not want to leave? If you want to leave, get your ducks in a row, find that perfect job, that dream job that you want, and start tailoring your resume and your LinkedIn and begin networking to get that job, right? And even if you end up having the option to stay, that may pay off for you. You may actually decide to leave, right? Even if they don't, you just quit. They say, no, you can keep your job. And you're like, no, but I found a better one. So that gives you more choice. If you think you want to stay, I would say do the same thing. Like, what's the worst case scenario? Yeah, I want to stay, but the worst case scenario is I don't have that option. So if you really focus on what your dream job is, internal to the company, maybe your networking is to try to, my position's being eliminated, but here's a perfect job within the company in another region, in another division, or in a client company, or someone related to company related to your current ecosystem, and then see if you can get that internal job. And you do the same thing. You kind of identify what that perfect job is. You position yourself and your personal brand to be a good fit for it. Your resume, your LinkedIn, your networking strategy. You do all the same things, even if you're networking for your current job or an internal job. And then if that still doesn't work, you still have to go out. You've kind of done the work. You've got your perfect job. You've already positioned yourself. So you're in a very strong position for for that situation. So it's really kind of the same advice in both cases, I guess.
Okay. Now, this is my pet peeve question when it comes to this, because I somehow along the way, I remember layoffs were very different from fired. And I remember specifically during the dot-com boom, I would be out with friends and we all got laid off. And one of my friends say, well, I got fired. And I'm like, liar, you got laid off. We all did. Like, none of fired. Like, there's a difference. What is the difference? What term should people be using if you do come across, let's say, an HR person, or you are trying to find a new job and you use the wrong term in that case? What could that kind of mean for you? I would imagine it could be disastrous potentially using the wrong terminology.
Yes, exactly. And that's a really important distinction. If you're on the HR side of things, they use all kinds of words, separated, and but layoffs for both HR and for individuals, layoffs and fired are two different things. Because if you're fired, it's for cause and it's your fault. If you're laid off or you're separated or you're downsized, it's not your fault. The business, changed. They had to eliminate positions and it wasn't personal to you. If you're fired, it was personal to you. And the reason this is important is that when you talk to anybody else, even your friends, the word you use positions you as being the problem or, an accident. And you never want to be positioned as a problem, right? Because even like that person who said that to you, what's your desire to go recommend them for another job? Not very high. But if you feel sorry for them because they got, involuntarily separated or downsized or their position was eliminated, kind of like, oh, I want to help you. That's too bad that happened to you. I want to help you. So when you're networking, and you were downsized, don't ever use that word. If you were fired, you can say, I chose to leave. And that's better than saying I was fired. But at any point at which in an interview context, someone says, tell us why you left, you have to be honest. Because that person probably will be calling your company and they were going to ask you, they're going to ask that company, what was the terms on which that person left the company? And the company's going to say, we fired them for cause. And now you're lying to a potential employer, and you're probably going to be next right there. Now, if you told the truth and you say, well, they fired me, and I didn't think it was fair, but this is what happened. And, you tell your side of the story, you tell what you learned from it, right? You say, now, even though I think there was a major miscommunication, now I know, don't ever do this again. And so when you position it like that, they're going to call and they're going to say, the company's going to say, yeah, we fired them. But now they wouldn't have been making that call to get a recommendation on you if they didn't believe you had learned your lesson and that you overcome whatever the issues were. So, it's a totally different situation. But never say you're fired unless you were let go for cause. And if you are let go for cause, have a story. Immediately, whether you're interviewing or networking, have a story about what happened.
Now, with the term "let go," that's another one that I think people will use for layoffs. Is that if they get laid off, is let go a decent option, or should it just stick to you're laid off? Like, be specific.
I personally prefer downsized. I don't like let go because some people will hear that as fired, right? So let's just say I was let go because we had a merger and 10,000 positions were eliminated, but don't ever say just I was let go. Say I was downsized or I was right-sized or I got caught up in a larger layoff. But make it clear that this was not for cause, that this wasn't personal. You weren't the only person getting laid off.
Now, how is it? Because you kind of covered this in the how you answered. Is it a black mark on your resume being laid off?
If it's truly a layoff, like downsize, like the company just had to eliminate positions, it's not really a black mark. People will not look at that and say, "Oh, this was your fault," right? If it happens over and over, they begin to that's not a pattern that you want to begin. Right now, you don't always have control over that. In certain industries, it happens a lot. You can get caught up in it. I was in telecom for a long time, and I got caught up in it a little bit. But the point is, it's not really a black mark, but it doesn't look as good as having your choice to leave each time. So going back to that, when you hear the rumor and you're like, do I want to stay? Do I want to go? If you want to go, take charge of it right there. And then when you go, you're interviewing, you can say, well, yeah, they were having a big layoff, and I decided to get a jump on it. I chose to be part of the layoff, or I chose to leave. But it's not a black mark unless you make it one. So if you go in on the defensive, if you go in angry at your old boss, if you go in betrayed by the other company, and you're taking all that energy to a new interview, to a new step in your career, it's not going to look good. So it's going to become a black mark because you're treating it, in a way that you're bringing all this negative energy into, and the new company's like, hey, don't bring that with you.
Right.
You got to put that aside. So it really, I guess the way to say it is, it's all in how you internalize it. And when you can make it your choice, like, okay, yeah, I'm getting laid off. I don't have a choice about that. But I choose to really take this as an opportunity to redefine where I am in my career and get assertive about what my next step is and get excited about something new. You can channel all that into explaining, yeah, I got laid off, but it was kind of a gift because I've really, what your company does and the kind of things that you're offering with this job are just, they turn me on. I wish I'd done that 2 years ago. I needed the layoff to kind of kick me into doing it, but I'm really ready for that. That's a completely different way to approach it than, yeah, those jerks, they, I thought I was safe and they let me go anyway. They fired me. And so you just you don't want any of that negative energy coming with you on your job search. So it's not a black mark unless you make it one.
Good. Yeah. That's refreshing to hear. There is that, people do take the negative on it, and it becomes like, it shouldn't be a negative. Cause it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't necessarily your fault. It was a business decision. Yeah. And
actually, in closing out this piece of the conversation, let's talk about that a little bit more, and about the stress and tension that come along with this, no matter what you want, even if it's the best thing that ever happened to you, because you just can't wait to get out of this job. Getting your mindset into a genuinely and authentically positive state is the key. And this is true if you're fired too, by the way. It's just, it's
right.
harder. You need to position a little more. But anytime you're being separated and it's not completely your choice to begin with, you have to make it your choice, and you have to let go of all those negative feelings. And all those feelings are going to be triggering you. So you think you've let it go, and then you talk to somebody and they got to stay. And now you're pissed off, right? You're talking to a colleague
right.
in another department. It's like, well, wait a minute, you didn't get let go. And now I'm all pissed off about it and feeling betrayed again. I thought I dealt with this. And that's why in our approach, the InPower Coaching career development approach, is to de-trigger all those emotions right up front. And the main reason is first of all, they pull your energy away. The more energy you spend being mad, angry, guilty. And by the way, we didn't talk about survivor's guilt. If you don't get laid off, you might be feeling very guilty, and you might go through this. But any of that negative energy, it's going to be distracting you from doing the good work you need to do to figure out, well, what do I want, and networking positively. But also, even more importantly, if you take any of that in to your networking, to your interviewing, to your offer negotiations, you're just killing your chances to make that next opportunity a true advance in your career. Even if it's the right career step on paper, it's not going to feel like it. And you're not going to get that opportunity if you're not, taking your excitement and your enthusiasm and your confidence in. And a lot of people, I've been through this. I know you've been through this. I know everybody probably listening to this has been through this. Every coaching client I've ever worked with has been through this. You have to go deep and de-triggering those negative emotions, and you have to keep doing it. And you have to work at staying in that positive mindset. It isn't easy, but when you do it well, now you walk into your new job feeling really good, and it's easier to stay in that positive orientation. I went through about 4 jobs where negativity was following me all along, and I thought, this is terrible. The work world is terrible. And then I realized it's me. It can be done, right? When you change from that victim mentality and that negative mentality to taking control of your life and your career, everything changes, and you start getting better opportunities offered to you. I know you had some of that experience yourself. Do you want to share one vignette before we close out?
Oh yeah. So when I got laid off from the consulting firm that I worked at, and again, I didn't really love my job. I love the expense account. I love some of the benefits of it, but I didn't love the. I loved what I did. I didn't love some of the stuff I had to do. Um, and I know when I left, I didn't necessarily get something right away because I needed to mentally let go of the dreams of ever getting that job back. If that makes any sense. If that job is done, I didn't like it. Like, you know, sometimes we leave a job, I think, and we forget, like, we want something almost similar. Like, we might want aspects that are similar, which I think is fine. But I was looking for almost like a carbon copy. And it's like I was miserable, so I have to let go of that. I have to go in a different direction.
It's like when the person that you
it took a while to get there. But right. And you gotta be like, and then the next thing is you want someone just like, it's like, what are you doing? So when I finally did let go, and I got something better and ended up with a better life in general out of the deal. So it wasn't bad in the end, but it was, the first bit wasn't very fun.
Exactly.
So,
well, and the key to it, the InPower strategy to it is to de-trigger all those things that you have to let go of, right? Take them out of being triggers for you and just make that part of your reality that you still don't have like these negative emotional charges tied to anymore. And we have that in all of our materials. You can go to our site and find out about it. Because it is very powerful and it does work, and it will help you get into that positive place that you need to be in. So I'm going to wrap up this conversation this week. I think we're going to do a kind of part 2 next week, and we may even do some more in January, because we're recording this at the end of the year, and it's up for a lot of people. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Mary, for being part of this today. Your experience is very relevant. Thank everyone who's listening in. Feel free to leave positive reviews and help other people find us if you find us on YouTube or Apple iTunes. And visit us at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com to see upcoming topics, past recordings, and learn how you can join us live. Have an empowered day, everybody. Take care.